My name is Jason Voiovich. I'm an innovation timing expert, and I'm going to share my own formula for how to plan out my product launch and my product development cycle by talking about the new book that I'm working on that focuses on exactly this and how drawing this chart and actually walking through the process saved me as I was getting down and I got surprised at the last minute. So let's get into it right now. What you can see here is this is the book development launch process, but really this is any product, any service follows the same sort of idea. What I've done is I've broken it down into three major categories: writing, publishing, and promotion. When you're writing a book, that's what you need to do. You need to make sure that you write a good book. That's important. That you publish it, meaning it's not poorly formatted. It's in audiobook or ebook or print, paperback format. It's got a great cover, all of that, those sort of things. You need to make sure that you have a good judge a book by its cover. You need to make sure you do both things. And then people know about that book. They're promoting it. Now I've color coded these in blue, yellow, and green so that you could see the difference. And we'll talk about why that's important in a little bit. First, let's talk a little bit about the writing process. There's research that you can see here, writing that overlaps with the research and kind of as a positive feedback loop throughout this process, of course. Editing also happens alongside, so you're not fully done with research or not fully done with writing before you begin editing. That is a little different. That kind of only works for self-publishing. Traditional publishing, you need to take this entire editing sequence and move it over. That's one of the reasons why traditional publishing takes so long, is that they want the writing process largely done before the editing process starts. And that can introduce not only time, but rework if you need to go back to the writing stage. When you do self-publish, one of the benefits you get is outside readers. Sometimes they call these beta readers, and those sort of people can help you in the editing process, but also the writing process and also the research process. So that's why there is an overlap during this time right here to help really coordinate and have the positive feedback loop. But at some point, research, writing, and outside influence needs to end. Otherwise, you don't get anything done. Next, let's move on to publishing. Publishing has a lot of different stages. Getting your ISBN numbers is kind of a one-shot deal. You go to a place called Bowker. That is the one. And if you've worked on a book before, you know what that is. Don't let Amazon or anyone else buy those for you. You want to make sure you own that. That's sort of like getting a provisional patent. This is kind of that ownership of your work, and it makes it easier for you to go get one of those in the future. That's a copyright. You want to make sure that you have a working title that you may change later to a final title. I know I did that for mine. I've used a little editing and kind of made it shorter and shorter and shorter. And then finally, you want to do the layout. You've got a print layout, an ebook layout. That takes some time, not too long, but it does take time. You'll notice that the editing process and the layout process tend to overlap with each other. I use a piece of software called Atticus that helps a lot with this. And then finally, there are some extra pages like dedications, the about the author, all of those sort of things need to be in there. Then finally, this is the judge a book by its cover process. You want to give that the time that it needs and really think about that. Look at other products on the market. And again, this is the same with any product. You're going to be doing this sort of judge a book by its cover. And then finally, you want to do some sort of proof. Now, a proof looks something like this. This is my first book. This is Marketer in Chief. This is actually the second edition of this spider squisher. You see this right here, this not for resale. That is Amazon sending you a copy of the book that actually is printed like it's going to be printed. And you can start to see, like, wow, look at the red doesn't quite line up. This line doesn't quite look very good. This is a little bit misplaced. So again, you can get a sense here for how the book is actually going to look. This prototyping process I'll cover in another video, but this is a critical thing to make sure you leave time for. Now, finally, let's go to promotion. Promotion is the last one where You've got, again, this overlaps the entire process. You don't want to start promoting way out here when you're just starting your research because you don't really know what you're talking about yet. But remember, by this point right here, where you start to see all these things start to overlap, you're starting to get serious right here. You're getting the ISBN number. That's when you should start making that initial announcement. And then finally, you'll wait a little while to do the pre-orders. You don't, not too early. Otherwise, people will forget that they got this. So no more than 4 to 6 weeks. We've got the review process. You want to schedule reviews in advance of your launch day. Do some email, maybe do some pay-per-click, some other promotions. Down here is your timeline. This is, a typical book process, maybe from here to here, at least a year. Sometimes books can take a lot longer than that. But again, you want to draw this out, and you'll notice, and I'll cover that in a little bit, that you actually want to draw this out with paper and pencil. It slows you down, and you start to visualize this. This thing is called technically a Gantt chart. All Gantt chart means is that you've got a timeline at the bottom, and you have what they call swim lanes, and you can start to see where they line up and where things might be dependent on one another. You'll notice here that I've identified, and you can do this, is these little red exclamation points. These things are really important for telling you what the critical parts of the process are. If you don't finish editing, you don't have a book. Simple as that. Sometimes, though, outside readers notice things you just don't, and they'll come back to you with critical feedback you need to work in at the 11th hour. You see this with prototype of physical products all the time, where you need to be able to work in additional feedback really late in the game. You need to be planning for that and thinking about that as this little red dot is kind of this is a risk right here. These are key risks in the timeline. Professional project managers talk about these all the time. They have their own codes for all of that, whether it's schedule risk, budget risk, scope risk. That doesn't really matter. Just make sure, hey, this is a big deal. Make sure to note it. Down here, the cover design is a big deal, and don't trust ChatGPT or Gemini or anything to come up with that. They're going to come up with pretty bland stuff. That's better than whipping out Adobe Illustrator on your own and putting something together. But find a real graphic designer. Ideally, someone who has worked on book covers before. This is, at this stage of the process, you really want to be thinking about getting professional help through the process to make sure that you're not making any unforced errors when you hit launch day. Now, when I took a look at July 15th for my launch date, every year for the past 10 years, except for the COVID years, Prime Day has been somewhere around July 15th. This was the launch date I was targeting. But this year, 2026, we're going all the way back to the 23rd through the 27th. This is key because today is June 6th. So again, if you take a look at my Gantt chart, what you notice right away is that, hey, most of the writing, most of the editing is done as of today. Most of that's done, but the layout may not be done. And had I not actually started this a little earlier when I found this out, I would have planned for something being done around July 4th. See that cute little flag right there? That's July 4th. I wouldn't have been working on the extra pages. I was working on the cover design, but I would not have accelerated that. I may need to skip the proof process. The good news about doing Kindle Direct Press is that once you publish, everything is what they call print on demand, which means that they're not printing thousands of books up front. They're printing them as people order them. So this is a unique situation in product development where you don't need to have the final product done on launch day. You can have V1 of the final product done, and then you can go to V sub N for additional versions. And I've certainly done that as well. These aren't different editions. You can update little things in the book without going to a second edition or a third edition if you've got little spelling errors that slip through, anything like that. The biggest thing I've needed to work on is really accelerating all of the promotional material And knowing that, hey, these are the items here that are going to continue past my launch day, that those my actual launch time might be extended. I could launch on Prime Day. I'm writing a book about timing, by the way. I have to get it done on the day that I planned. But it is important to know that, hey, these things are going to continue past my launch day. So just making sure I've got something ready here, and then I can continue moving them along as the rollout and kind of my launch day becomes more of a launch week, launch month, launch few months. That's critical in the early days of any product. It's not just the day to pay attention to, it's really a sequence of events that goes past the launch day and really gets the product off on the right foot over the first few months. So bottom line here, what are the 3 things you can learn from this process no matter what product you're doing? If you're launching a book, great. But if you're launching a tie-down strap, if you're launching a medical product, if you're launching an agricultural product, same sort of deal. 3 things. Number 1, draw this chart. Don't use software. Don't use ChatGPT. Don't use Excel. Actually get out a notebook. This was 99 cents at Walmart. Get it, draw it out. Slow yourself down. Watch where things line up. Watch where, hey, this date doesn't seem to line up with this date. Is that okay? Or is this a dependency? If it's dependent, if I have to finish this before I start this, make sure this date isn't out here and this date's not here. What is the realistic amount of time? Look down at your timeline. Is that enough time? Can it be shortened? And if it takes longer, is that okay? Drawing it out is the only way to really know. Second, chunk out the tasks. If you notice here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 tasks, and that's not all the tasks. There are plenty of tasks inside each of these that I could go into. Here's the thing. If that's 50 tasks or 60 tasks in order to bring your product to market, you're going to get overwhelmed. One of the things I learned early in my product development career was chunk things into groups that are meaningfully go together. They could have interdependencies between these major chunks, but they are grouped together logically. All the writing, research, editing, and outside reading tasks all fit together. All the publishing tasks, getting the ISBN, doing the cover, doing the layout, all that fits together. And promotion, all of this promotional kind of advertising effort, that all fits together. It's a lot easier to think about 3 things than it is to think about 50 things. Keep that in mind. And then finally, this is a lesson I have learned the hard way, and I'm learning it again as we speak. And I'm going to put an extra star and a smiley face and an exclamation point by that. Subtract 10% of your time. What I mean by that is take whatever launch day you had planned and say, I'm going to move that back 10% of the time. This is maybe a 10 to 12 month process. That means I got to be at least 4 to 6 weeks ahead of where I thought I was going to be. So all of these tasks, if I needed to accelerate 4 to 6 weeks in a hurry, am I ready to do that? Have I done enough of the writing? Is it clean enough? Do I have software that I know of that can accelerate this process? Am I working with people I trust that could do the cover and I know they could do it quicker? Do I absolutely need the proof, or could I skip that part? And finally, am I thinking about my promotion in a way where I could get away with stretching this process a little bit? If you are going up to the day and something happens, let's say you are working with a distributor and they say, or a retail channel, and they say, you know what? Amazon moved its day up. Now you're selling to Walmart or Menards or to Lowe's, and they say, you better move your day up because we're moving all of our promotions up to match theirs, and you're not ready. You'd have things on the water from China, or you just don't have your packaging ready. You will miss this opportunity, and you don't want to miss the opportunity. This is a critical way to think about time in the product development process. And if you haven't done one of these before and you haven't drawn it out, this is the number one thing you can do. Even if you're late in the process right now, backcast this, draw it out, make sure you're thinking through all of the different steps to make sure you have kind of successful launch you want at the end. That's all for now. If you've got questions on how to build a Gantt chart or how to build the timeline for your product or invention or how you should chunk down the different tasks, drop a link in the comments and I'll focus on drawing out a chart for you on a subsequent video. Until then, see you on the next one.